When the emperor bestowed the marriage, it was the first time I met Prince Xiaoyao, Chuzhan. A handsome man in brocade robes knelt in the center of the grand hall, his voice firm and unwavering. "Your Majesty, this humble servant already has someone in his heart." The emperor's face changed drastically. And I, the left chancellor's daughter, rumored to be deeply in love with Prince Xiaoyao, remained indifferent. Ministers, maids, and eunuchs in the hall all looked at me with pity. I quickly realized that my indifferent expression didn't match the story of the chancellor's daughter being madly in love with Chuzhan for 5 years, so I blinked my phoenix eyes, letting tears brim. The pity in everyone's eyes deepened. My transmigrated father, Lord Shengguan, secretly squeezed my palm, signaling me to stay calm. In fact, I was quite calm. Not to mention that the effeminate Prince Xiaoyao wasn't my type. The emperor's bestowed marriage was fraught with danger. The day before the betrothal, the emperor had visited the left chancellor's residence in disguise. "Shengguan Qingting," he said to me, "I pity your deep affection for Prince Xiaoyao and wish to bestow marriage upon you too." He paused, seeing my dazed expression, which he interpreted as overwhelming joy, and continued with satisfaction. "However, my brother is playful and idle, lacking ambition, which worries me greatly. After the marriage, I hope you will help me keep him on the right path." "Shengguan Qingting, do you understand my meaning?" Of course, I understood. He wanted me to monitor Prince Xiaoyao. The emperor, though suspicious, wasn't reassured even though Prince Xiaoyao held no political power and was merely a leisurely prince, the favorite son of the previous emperor. Before I could respond, my father had already pulled me down to kneel. "This humble servant thanks your majesty for the grace on behalf of my daughter." Later, my father told me that any hesitation on my part would invite disaster, and only by agreeing could I save my life. So, when the entire court was criticizing Prince Xiaoyao for his lack of propriety, I sincerely cheered for him. "Go, Prince Xiaoyao. You can do it, Prince Xiaoyao." Fighting. I even maliciously hoped that the emperor, in a fit of anger, would execute Chuzhan, sparing me from the royal mess. However, the emperor compromised, reaching an agreement with Chuzhan. Chuzhan had to marry me, but he could also marry his beloved, making us both equal consorts. I despised Chuzhan for a long time afterward for this halfway betrayal. I saw Chuzhan only a handful of times. On our wedding day, he stayed in Consort Wan's quarters. This Consort Wan was the one he mentioned in the hall, his beloved, his childhood sweetheart. He had studied under Zhushuiliu at Yuqiong Mountain in his youth and shared a deep bond with her. The accompanying nanny, Sun Mama, was deeply saddened but forced a smile to comfort me. "Miss, don't be sad. One day, the prince will see your virtues." I wasn't sad at all. I was glad he had no interest in me, saving me a lot of trouble. If I could be forgotten in a small courtyard, living a peaceful life, it wouldn't be a bad thing. I continued to play the role of the neglected consort until one day I encountered Chuzhan in the garden. He was up early, dressed in martial attire, his sword dancing, a stark contrast to his usual delicate demeanor. Flowers on both sides were shaken into a flurry by his sword energy, petals falling on his head and shoulders, making him look like a jade-like beauty with a sword like a rainbow. Consort Wan held a towel and sheath, waiting on the side. Sun Mama urged me to go and greet him. I stood still. In the thin morning light, I suddenly felt this scene was familiar. As if long ago, on some day, this body, which didn't belong to me, had encountered a similar scene. Was it then that Shengguan Qingting started to fall for Chuzhan? "Who is there?" Chuzhan noticed me. Clearly, he knew it was me, so his sword didn't strike, but a sharp sword energy split the air towards me. I stumbled back, fell. "Miss!" Sun Mama exclaimed. Chuzhan glanced at me coldly, without a hint of apology, only taking the cloth from Consort Wan to carefully wipe his sword. Sun Mama was trembling with anger. Consort Wan covered her mouth and chuckled. "Oh, it's Consort Shengguan. I thought it was some scheming person." I calmly got up and saluted. "Sorry to disturb you, Your Highness." I fell ill afterward, with a high fever that alarmed even the emperor, who sent his best imperial doctor. The consort was frightened, said the doctor. Perhaps out of guilt, Chuzhan unprecedentedly came to visit me. When he arrived, my fever had mostly subsided, and I was listlessly drinking millet porridge. "How is my dear consort?" he asked with feigned concern, eyes openly mocking. I spat a mouthful of porridge onto his face. He was stunned, and so were the maids and nannies in the room. I hurriedly grabbed a cloth to wipe his face, saying, "Your Highness, please call me Qingting. Dear consort is just too disgusting." His handsome brows twitched uncontrollably. The maids and nannies, who had just recovered, were once again stunned. "How is my dear consort feeling?" he asked with feigned concern, his eyes openly mocking. I spat a mouthful of porridge onto his face. He was stunned, and so were the maids and nannies in the room. Hurriedly, I grabbed a cloth to wipe his face, saying, "Your Highness, please call me Qingting. Dear consort is just too disgusting." His handsome brows twitched uncontrollably. The maids and nannies, who had just recovered from their shock, were once again stunned. After recovering, I entered the palace to express my gratitude and report the incident to the emperor. "Your Majesty, it seems Prince Xiaorao might have grown suspicious." The emperor sneered. "So, what if he's suspicious? With his intelligence, he should have known that this marriage wasn't simple. I want him to understand that everything about him is under my control." "Yes, everything in the world is under your Majesty's control." I flattered him appropriately. The emperor was very pleased with my behavior and rewarded me with many precious items. Chuzhan, however, was disdainful, his tone full of sarcasm. "Wow, just one trip to the palace and you got so many good things. It seems our Xiaoyao prince's residence will never worry about food and drink if you visit more often." I pushed the imperial gifts towards him, smiling brightly. "If your Highness likes them, please take them." "How can I take something the emperor bestowed upon you?" He twitched his lips and pushed the items back to me. Looking at him sincerely, I continued to smile. "A woman follows her father at home and her husband after marriage. All my belongings are naturally yours. If you tell me to go east, I dare not go west. If you tell me to eat porridge, I dare not eat rice." Probably disgusted by my words, goosebumps clearly appeared on the back of his hand. I pushed the items back into his arms, bowed, and took my leave. After a few steps, I heard him call out behind me, "Shengguan Qingting." Turning around to face him, I saw his eyes glinting with mischief, his thin lips moving, "Go east." I was momentarily stunned but quickly smiled lightly. "Your Highness, you were serious?" Following this incident, Consort Wan, who had always been indifferent to me, started visiting my quarters frequently. I didn't know what her intentions were in calling me sister, but every time I saw her, I got a headache. "Sister, the prince's birthday is coming soon. I've long heard that your embroidery skills are exceptional. I wonder if your gift for the prince is related to embroidery." Lifting my eyelids to glance at her, I said, "What does it matter to you?" My undisguised hostility made Consort Wan's face turn dark, embarrassed. After she left, Sun Mama earnestly admonished me, "Miss, how can you speak to Consort Wan like that? She holds a status equal to yours. Even if she didn't, you should maintain a friendly relationship for appearance's sake." Blah, 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 she went on, finally adding, "Miss, why not embroider 100 longevity picture for the prince's birthday?" I replied, "Mama, don't worry. I have my plans." Chuzhan was quite modest. As the esteemed Prince Xiaoyao, second only to the emperor, his 27th birthday celebration was merely a slightly more lavish dinner than usual. This was, in fact, the first time I dined with him. Consort Wan dutifully served Chuzhan food and wine, epitomizing the virtues of a gentle and kind woman. Feeling inadequate, I sat quietly, focusing on my meal. Chuzhan remarked coolly, "Qingting, be careful not to overeat and cause indigestion." I looked up at him. "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. Are you eating so little to maintain your slender waistline?" Consort Wan's hand trembled slightly as she served food, and Chuzhan took a moment to swallow his wine. He said nothing but gave me a hard kick under the table. Yes, the noble Prince Xiaoyao kicked me under the table, disregarding decorum. Shocked, I forgot to retaliate and just stared at him. He smiled. Though I knew Qingting adored me, there's no need to gaze at me so affectionately while eating. Consort 1 glanced at us, a curious expression on her face. I heard from His Highness that before the imperial decree, he had never met you, sister. Why did you pine for him for 5 years? I simply replied, the prince is the most handsome man in the capital. Chu Zhan's face paled, Consort 1's face paled, and the maids' faces paled as well. Only I remained rosy-cheeked, continuing my meal. The room fell silent. To lighten the mood, after several rounds of wine, Consort 1 presented her birthday gift, a beautifully embroidered inner garment. Your Highness, my embroidery is not as skilled as sister's. Please don't disdain it. She cast me a sidelong glance, a hint of challenge in her eyes. I imagined her thoughts. No matter how good your embroidery is, the prince won't wear it. Chu Zhan glanced at the garment, smiling. As long as Wanner made it, I like it. Consort 1 gave me a triumphant look. What did you prepare for His Highness, sister? I said calmly, I prepared a riddle containing the gift for His Highness. If he can solve it, the gift is his. If not, he can guess again next year. Oh, tell me the riddle, Chu Zhan said, intrigued. This gift looks square by day and round by night. From afar, it's dim, but up close, it shines. It's soft on the outside, hard on the inside. Some people love it, some hate it. Can you guess what it is, Your Highness? Chu Zhan pondered for a long time before saying, I can't guess. Then you can guess again next year. Chu Zhan said, what if I can't guess it next year, or the year after that? Will you never have to prepare a new gift for me? I looked at him seriously and asked, Your Highness, are you really that foolish? Chu Zhan was persistent in trying to solve the riddle, resulting in more frequent visits to my room. Though he never stayed overnight, Nanny Sun was quite pleased. She believed that if I put in a bit more effort, we would soon consummate our marriage. Her idea of effort involved making soup, sewing clothes, and showing concern. I had no interest in such tasks, so she took it upon herself to make the sweet soup, tearfully pleading with me to bring it to Chu Zhan. Having known Nanny Sun since childhood, I couldn't refuse her request. Chu Zhan was practicing calligraphy in his study when I brought the soup over. Your Highness, the weather is dry. Have some soup to soothe your lungs. He looked at me in surprise, raising an eyebrow. Did you make this? I'm not that virtuous. Nanny Sun made it. And she told you to bring it? I clapped my hands. Your Highness is truly perceptive. Chu Zhan was speechless for a moment. After waiting for me to serve him, he finally scooped up some soup himself. I wandered around the study, bored. Then I discovered Chu Zhan's secret chamber. It was an accident. Unlike the grand depictions on TV, Chu Zhan's study walls were adorned with directly imprinted paintings of beautiful women instead of ancient calligraphy. Seeing a flirtatious beauty in red with a bewitching cinnabar mole on her forehead, I stood on tiptoe and pressed the mole. A hidden door opened. I was stunned, and Chu Zhan's movements stopped as well. A palpable tension filled the air, enveloping me. Fear paralyzed me, making it hard to breathe. I felt that if I moved even slightly, Chu Zhan's sword would slit my throat. At this critical moment, a servant's voice came from outside. Your Highness, the Emperor has arrived at the palace. Chu Zhan's pupils contracted sharply. The Emperor, impatient, had already ordered the door to be opened. As the door swung open, I quickly closed the secret door, darted to Chu Zhan's side like a rabbit, and grabbed his hand with the brush. Thus, the Emperor was greeted with a scene of romantic affection, Chu Zhan holding me, teaching me calligraphy, both of us blushing. Of course, I was blushing from running too fast. As for Chu Zhan, the reason was unknown. The Emperor did not stay long at the palace. I guessed he didn't trust me and was conducting a surprise inspection, but found nothing. Nanny Sun couldn't see the undercurrents, only knowing that Chu Zhan and I got along well, even having intimate interactions. In retrospect, I marveled at my own wisdom and agility during that incident. The memory of Chu Zhan holding me while practicing calligraphy seemed less real. The warmth of his calloused palm on the back of my hand, his uneven breathing, and the faint fragrance on him felt like a distant memory. However, it became common knowledge within the palace that Shangguan Qingting was not a neglected consort. Chu Zhan's gaze toward me changed, filled with curiosity and inquiry. One day, he took the opportunity for a candid conversation. "Why did you help me?" he asked bluntly. I responded cheerfully, "Because I love you. Shangguan Qingting has loved you for 5 years. Don't you know?" He pinched my puffed-up cheek. "Is this the expression of someone in love with me? Then tell me, why is there a secret chamber in your study? Do you really have rebellious intentions? If you tell me the truth, I'll tell you mine." I looked him in the eye and said earnestly, "Because you are my husband. As husband and wife, our fates are intertwined. If you fall, my end won't be good either." Chu Zhan laughed heartily, seemingly satisfied with my answer. But I wasn't satisfied with his explanation. He claimed he wasn't plotting rebellion but was tired of being monitored and suspected by the emperor. The secret chamber was his escape route to a new life. It sounded like he revealed a big secret, but it provided no useful information. I rolled my eyes. Half-truths lack sincerity. He smiled like a fox and leaned closer. "If you tell me the answer to the riddle, I'll tell you the rest." His strong presence and the close proximity of his crimson lips flustered me for a second. Quickly regaining composure, I stood up. "I'm not interested in your new life. You are my wife. You will always be a part of my life," he said behind me in a deep voice. I couldn't see his expression and wondered about his thoughts. Had he said the same to Consort 1? The emperor was even more terrifying than I had imagined. Somehow, he had learned that Chu Zhan and I had not consummated our marriage. Recalling the scene of supposed intimacy in the study, his suspicious heart wavered once more. This was how I explained it to the emperor. "At first, Your Highness was very resistant to me. Not only did he ignore my existence, but he also allowed Consort 1 to bully me. But I have always been deeply in love with him. No matter how he treated me, I remained constant in my affection. Gradually, Your Highness was moved by my sincerity, but he struggled internally because Consort 1 was the woman he truly loved." The emperor remained silent, his deep, inscrutable eyes clouded with suspicion, fixing on me with an intense gaze. I shivered, cold sweat dripping down, unsure where I had misspoken. It is indeed touching that Qingting is so deeply in love with the King of Leisure. He finally spoke, his voice chilling. "So, Qingting, would you betray me for the King of Leisure?" I kowtowed heavily. "I dare not. The King of Leisure is my sky, but Your Majesty is the sky above that sky. I would never dare to betray Your Majesty." "Ha ha ha, look how frightened you are." I was just joking. The emperor suddenly changed his expression, his laughter booming. "I have always trusted Minister Shangguan. Naturally, I trust his daughter as well." This was, in reality, a veiled threat. I bowed my head, filled with trepidation. The emperor continued, "How can you capture a man's heart with just affection? You are still young and inexperienced. I'll have an old nanny from the palace teach you some bedroom arts. Learn well. No matter how much the King of Leisure struggles, he won't escape your grasp." I blushed furiously. The old nanny the emperor recommended was indeed very experienced, but I had no opportunity to use her teachings on Chu Zhan. Soon it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. To help me, the emperor bestowed upon me the honor of hosting a mid-autumn family banquet at the palace and summoned Consort 1 to the palace to accompany the Empress Dowager for moon viewing. Consort 1's glare at me before she left could have bored holes through me. I swear I had no impure thoughts about Chu Zhan, but when we were alone in a room, sitting opposite each other by the light of red candles, my mind uncomfortably recalled all the bedroom arts taught by the old nanny. My face flushed. To cover my inappropriate thoughts, I quickly poured us both a cup of wine. As soon as I brought the cup to my lips, I frowned. The wine was clearly drugged, tasting exactly like the potent aphrodisiac the old nanny had described. I put down my cup, but before I could warn Chu Zhan, he had already downed his. This was bad. "Your Highness, how about we visit Tianxiang Tower?" I suggested earnestly. He looked at me, then refilled his cup. What nonsense are you thinking? Your Highness, perhaps you should retire early. I clutched my head in feigned pain. I seemed to have a headache and wished to rest early. He smiled, a particularly sinister smile. Shengguan Qingting, what are you afraid of? His gaze was already a bit unfocused, tinged with desire. I swallowed, nearly bolting for the door. He grabbed my wrist, pushing me against the door, whispering, Qingting, you are beautiful. The faint scent of alcohol mingled with his warm breath. I trembled, struggling to put some distance between us, and said seriously, Your Highness, stay calm. Think of Consort 1. You two are true love. You must not succumb easily. Remain chaste for Consort 1. Remain chaste. He laughed softly. Consort 1 and I are only married in name, not in reality. Consort 1 and I are like siblings. She couldn't bear to see me trapped by the Emperor, unable to control my own life, so she sacrificed herself, pretending to marry me, to balance against you and secretly help me. So that's how it was. But I felt that Consort 1 didn't see Chuzhan just as a brother. She probably had other intentions. Her so-called sacrifice was likely part of a bigger plan. So, Shengguan Qingting, Chuzhan leaned closer again. You are my only true wife. My heart softened. I stared at him, and his warm lips descended like a storm. I couldn't resist or push him away. It was a romantic night. The only regret was that I never had the chance to use any of the bedroom arts taught by the old nanny. Chuzhan said, Qingting, I have figured out the answer to the birthday riddle. The answer is you, Shengguan Qingting. By day, you are sharp and prickly, constantly jabbing at others. By night, you are charming and tender, round and soft. From afar, you appear like any other lady of the capital, but up close, you stand out, unique and captivating. Outwardly gentle and kind, yet with a resilient heart within. Some people dislike you, but I really like you. Qingting, did I guess correctly? I was at a loss for words. This riddle was something I had made up to deceive him, but unexpectedly, he came up with a reasonable answer. I was stunned for a long time, neither nodding nor shaking my head, and just asked, Then why did you not like me before? I have loved you for 5 years. Were you not moved? Though he appeared somewhat apologetic, he still arrogantly said, There are plenty of women who have had unrequited love for me. If I had to be moved by each one, wouldn't I be exhausted? But did you really like me just because of my looks? Guess. He pondered for a moment and said, I guess it was that time you were out riding in a carriage and the horse got spooked, nearly causing an accident. I happened to pass by and saved you, and since then, you've had feelings for me, right? Yes, I pretended to reminisce. I remember it was a sunny day, and you seemed like a hero descending from the heavens. But I glanced at him, remembering that Consort 1 had said he had never seen me before the marriage decree, and added, But you left before I could thank you. Well, your father is Minister Shengguan. If word had reached a certain someone, he would have grown even more suspicious, so I left in a hurry. He paused, tugging at my sleeve. You haven't answered if I guessed the riddle correctly. Reluctantly, I nodded. You got it right, Your Highness. Very impressive. He smiled proudly, pulling me into his arms. Qingting, I like the birthday gift you gave me very much. Anyone could see that Chuzhan was deeply in love. He not only spent every night in my quarters, but also often drank and admired flowers with me, practiced calligraphy and poetry, and went out on excursions. We were like young lovers, inseparable and deeply infatuated with each other. Nanny's son wept tears of joy. Miss, you have finally seen the light at the end of the tunnel. No, not yet. The Emperor still frequently summoned me to the palace to inquire about our situation. Even though I only spoke of trivial matters, I was still filled with fear. Chuzhan said, Just bear with it a little longer. Soon we can leave. The secret chamber in his study led to the largest dock in the capital. Over the years, he had secretly built ships and stockpiled wealth and horses, waiting for the right opportunity to leave the capital. We will go to Dali. where the people are simple and the climate is spring-like year-round. You will love it. Consort 1, however, did not want me to go with him, leading to a fierce argument between them. I didn't need to eavesdrop to know what she said about me. Unreliable, suspicious background, potential for leaking secrets, and so on. But the final decision was not hers. Chuzhan had once told me that he could leave anyone behind, except for me. I had to go with him. No wonder Consort 1's eyes looked like they were bleeding every time she saw me. On New Year's Eve, the emperor hosted a banquet in the palace for officials and their families. In the midst of the revelry, a highly skilled assassin suddenly appeared, his sword aimed directly at the emperor. The guards on either side had no time to react. In that critical moment, Chuzhan, who was seated beside the emperor, stepped forward to shield him. It felt like slow motion. I watched in horror as the sword pierced Chuzhan's body, cutting through his skin and stabbing into his heart. Blood spurted out, dyeing even my eyes a deep red. Aren't time travel heroines supposed to be omnipotent? Why am I so powerless? Screams erupted around me. I tried to call out Chuzhan's name, but no sound came out. Something surged into my mind, and I blacked out. I had a long dream where I brought Chuzhan home to meet my parents. My parents were very pleased with him, continuously asking him questions. What kind of work do you do? I'm a civil servant. How is your family background? Pretty good, with a house, a car, and a good amount of land. What did your parents do? They have passed away, leaving behind a substantial fortune. Hearing this, my parents were even more satisfied. I laughed heartily, but then, suddenly, my parents and Chuzhan disappeared. Everything around me turned dark, leaving me alone. I woke up suddenly, hearing Nanny-san's soft sobs. I struggled to get up and scolded her. Why are you crying? The prince isn't dead. Nanny-san kneeled with a thud. Miss, you must grieve. The prince, he has passed away. I was stunned, my mind blank. I staggered a few steps and turned back to ask her, what did you say? Miss. Nanny-san couldn't hold back her tears. The mansion was filled with mourning. All vibrant items were covered with white cloths. I changed into mourning clothes and staggered towards the mourning hall. Nanny-san tried to support me several times, but I pushed her away. Chuzhan, I've come to be with you. Finally, I saw Chuzhan. His face was as handsome and peaceful as ever, like countless mornings when I woke up to see him. But this time, no matter how much I made a fuss, he wouldn't open his eyes. I dismissed everyone and knelt beside the coffin, saying, Chuzhan, you must be faking your death, right? It's how things are done in dramas. You promised to take me to Dali. You would never deceive me. This must be part of your plan, right? Indeed. My sister is as clever as ever. Suddenly, Consort 1's voice came from behind. I turned to see her lifting the curtain and stepping out, dressed in mourning clothes like me. What do you mean? Is the prince truly faking his death? I asked, agitated. Yes, it's part of our plan. The assassin was arranged by us as well. Why didn't the prince tell me? Consort 1 smiled, but her smile felt terrifying to me. She said, because I told the prince that you are straightforward. If you knew the truth, you might expose the plan. It's better to tell you only after the plan is completed. Moreover, you and the prince have deep feelings for each other. Knowing about his death would surely make you heartbroken, which could also dispel the suspicions of the one on the dragon throne. The prince instructed me that after faking his death, you should also take a drug to simulate suicide. She smiled again, and I felt a shiver down my spine, stepping back involuntarily. But now I've changed my mind. I want you to really die. Even if you loved the prince for 5 years, I loved him for 12 years. From the first time I saw him, I was in love with him. You, Shangguan Qingting, married him with ulterior motives. How can you compare to me? Once you're dead, he'll look at me. She grinned fiercely, approaching me step by step. I wanted to escape, but her superior martial skills easily subdued me. As the red pill was forced into my mouth, I took one last look at Chuzhan. Historical records state, In the 23rd year of the Longxi era of the Great Yin Dynasty, the prince of carefree Chu Zhan died protecting the emperor. Subsequently, his consort Shangguan Qingting took poison at the morning hall. Another consort, Su Wan, shaved her head and became a nun. Everyone spoke of the two consorts of the Prince of Carefree as deeply loyal and righteous, and the emperor lavishly rewarded the three of them. I think the emperor must be very pleased with this outcome. Yes, after swallowing the pill and thinking I was doomed, I did not die. I woke up on a ship, and the first thing I saw was Chu Zhan, who had been by my side all along. It turned out that the pill Consort One forced me to take was not poison, but a genuine fake death drug. She hated me, but in the end, she didn't want Chu Zhan to be sad. Her threats were just to scare me. But she also didn't want to see the man she loved with another woman, so she arranged for me and Chu Zhan to leave the capital smoothly and then requested to become a nun after our departure. Chu Zhan never understood Su Wan's actions, but I did. She was simply too desperate. She loved Chu Zhan for so many years, yet he always saw her as a sister and easily fell in love with someone else. The most painful thing in the world is unrequited love. And how fortunate I am. I turned to look at the man beside me and whispered, "Chu Zhan, I love you." He pretended to frown. "Shangguan Qingding, you really are so blunt."